does God have favorites? Because he loves everyone and XYZ, XYZ. So I asked someone about this and they go, absolutely, God has favorites. He said, you break down the word favorite and the first part is favor. And it's very explicit in the Old Testament that God favored, Moses, Elijah, Abraham, XYZ, and he blessed them in those ways. And so, not to get overly spiritual here, but I do think you have a moral responsibility to be excellent and to be great with the gifts you were given by God. And through being excellent within those gifts, God will bless you tenfold.
Everyone, welcome to Fulfillment Project. Today, we've got the Dom. He's the 20-year-old founder of The Running Effect. It's the fastest growing running media brand in the world, earning spots on the top Spotify sports podcast in the U.S. Dom's platform is becoming the go-to destination for elite storytelling, raw inspiration, and next-generation performance insights across the running world. He now leads a growing media company that's redefining how endurance is talked about, experienced, and shared. Dom, welcome to the show, brother.
Andy, a privilege and pleasure to be on this one. I feel like I get a lot of people who ask me to come on their podcasts, but rarely do I come on a podcast that I heard about it before it even launched and before it released. And for some context, I think there's some whole runaround story of, our families definitely know each other in a deep way. I don't know how you got in the mix when you married your wife, but I feel like I grew up going to church, seeing you, being an altar server up in the sanctuary, seeing you looking down. And then I feel like years later, we actually connected for the first time when I got a little older and moved and probably became more worthy of being in your presence. And I'd say within about 2 minutes of that walk, I think we were like, where have you been, man? You're legit. So it's been awesome getting to know you over the past few months. And it's been so cool seeing the podcast grow into what it is today and be a little small part of it here today with you.
Well, thanks, Dom. And for the listeners, Dom is the inspiration for the podcast. He probably didn't know it at the time, and neither did I. But I was talking to him about my passion and hope to one day release a book. And he planted the seed. Hey, you should think about starting a Substack. I've got friends that have done that. They've turned into New York Times bestsellers, and it all started one post at a time. And I thought, man, I've got years worth of posts. That was a way easier entry point than putting out a whole book all at once. And I put my first article out that night. That turned into the podcast, turned into the long form thing, Dom. So thank you. Thank you. I don't know if you realize you had such a big impact on me, but on that walk, I was like, where's this bro been? Where has this guy been?
Yeah, so I tell people real quick, I tell people all the time, and I'm sure I told you this on the walk, but one of my favorite quotes of all time: most successful people aren't talented, smart, or lucky. They just acted while everyone else talked themselves out of it. And I almost think if you're out there and you have big dreams or goals, it's very easy to cling on to that and think about it from like a 5-10 year vision. Oh, I'm going to write a book in 5 years. But it's like, well, what can you actually do today in the next 5 years to set yourself up to write that book? And I think we live in an age where we have just such beautiful opportunities and platforms like Substack, like a podcast, like Instagram or TikTok or Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days, to post things, to connect with an audience. And it's all free, which is remarkable. And so I highly encourage people out there. Yeah, whether it's a book or whether it's just like wanting to get your thoughts out there, of which I think every human has good thoughts to share. Hit publish. What do you lose?
Nothing. And I put a post out about this a couple weeks ago, Dom, where if you're not passionate about something in life right now, find it. Like 911 emergency. Figure some, it doesn't have to be online related. It can be woodworking, it can be crocheting, it can be running, it can be doing an outdoor activity, indoor activity, whatever. Find something that gets your heart pumping, baby, because life is too short and we're all in our prime right now. We'll never be in better shape than we are today. And do it. And this podcast has been one of those gifts to me. So, and the tipping point, Dom, you're right. Don't wait. Don't try to make the final thing. Just start with something you can do today. So that was the beauty of the Substack. And I mean, it's crazy. I never would have thought I would have had 30,000 listens in a couple months. I thought maybe my mom and a couple of my friends would tune in, so it's been...
You're a G, Andy. You're a G. You know it. You know it too. As the kids would say, you're him these days. That's the new one. It's like you're that guy, but they say you're him. I want to say something real quick before we move on to the passion point. The problem with me and you is we could just go down crazy rabbit holes all day, every day. But in terms of passion, because I think this is a big lesson I've learned this year. I think a lot of people ask how you find your passion. And the answer is by starting when you sucked and not giving up. Like, very few people are passionate about something before they start it. You become passionate about something when you start it, and then you see momentum, and then you become addicted and you get obsessed to the, success and the feelings of it, and waking up early and writing or running or whatever it might be. And so I think when it comes to passion, people actually ask the wrong question, and they try to sit down and they try to figure out, oh, what am I passionate right now? And some people are lucky enough that they have an answer right then and there. But I think in general, actually, you create your passion. I don't think you find it. And you create it through trying things out and seeing what sticks. And I think if you stick with something long enough, you'll get good enough, and then you'll get praise and recognition for it. And then you're like, oh, this is my thing. So I think we asked the wrong question when it comes to passion.
Welcome to Fulfillment Project. I'm so happy you tuned in today. If you get something out of this episode, please share it with a friend. Thumb up, subscribe, 5-star. We're on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Substack, wherever you get your content, you can find Fulfillment Project. All right, let's get back into it. Wow, that's a great point. And just a personal example to put a stamp on it is running for me. The motivation never came in the morning when I had to wake up at 4 a.m. to get my miles in. The motivation came when I got home and I was showered up and I felt super juiced up to do it tomorrow. But like, man, when I'm waking up and groggy, it's like motivation comes during or after the activity, rarely before, especially when it's something hard. And I don't know if things are worthwhile if they're not hard. At least they're not enduring if they're not hard. So I love your point there, Dom, is maybe you don't have the answer. Try. Shoot a couple things out. Try. Stick to something for a week, a couple weeks, a month, and see how it goes. And if that's not it, find something else.
100%, man. I'll shut up. You keep going. You keep going.
No,
I always have thoughts. I'll shut up.
The more, Dom, the better. So we're 20 episodes in. I've never scheduled an episode like this. I've got a bunch in the can right now, recorded, ready to go out. But I wanted you on my 20th as a pivotal moment, celebrating your 20th year. And you put out a post that impacted me a lot because I thought, did I write this for Dom? Or are these Dom's thoughts? Because so much of what you said is like, wow, these are big lessons I've learned along the way. So 20 years. Do you feel 20 years old or do you feel 50 years old? Because when I hear you talk, you sound 50.
I would say the honest answer is 20. I would say 25. I think when I turned 20, I was like, oh, this feels weird. Like, my age feels so much younger than I am. And it kind of brought me back into reality. I think just the way I live my life and how much of an adult I am, paying taxes, paying utility bills, calling people for different, maintenance fixes, taking out the trash, all that sort of stuff that all your listeners are probably chuckling and being like, oh, I did that for 20 years. What are you talking about, kid? That makes me feel pretty old. Even living by myself in a nice townhome, I definitely feel, I'd say 25 if I had to put a number on it, but I'll take 20. I think the problem is I'm going to get to 30 and I'm going to be like, man, you should have savored those, 20 through 25. But I think when you're my age, you always are searching for the next thing. I found this in middle school. In middle school, you're playing middle school basketball and you're like, oh, I can't wait for high school because you have brothers who are in high school and it seems really exciting. And then you get in high school and then you're really excited about college and the freedom and the independence. And then when you're in college, you're like, oh, I'm really excited to have a job in my own apartment. And then you're like, oh, I'm really excited to get married. And then so I think we as humans are kind of on this never ending trap of next. And so for me, it's actually been a really big struggle to just be where my feet are and be like, dude, you're 20, enjoy it. Marriage chapter will come when it comes. Kid chapter will come when it comes. But like, take a moment. 2 years ago, you would have been thrilled. You're living in answered prayers.
Dream world, but it's reality. And the hardest part about people like you and you in particular is the best is yet to come. Like, you're on a roller coaster and it feels like you're at the top, but you haven't even left the station, Dom. Like, you're about to go up and experience things you could have never imagined. And to prove my point, you said something. The new MBA is starting your own business. And I think a lot of your experience and wisdom and why you might feel 25 is because you've experienced so many things that a person usually doesn't experience until their mid-20s, their 30s, when they start to have real organic and hard experiences. How do I get over this hump? How do I pay these bills? I want to scale, but I don't know how. Who do I connect with that's going to help me grow? And most people just don't encounter that. It's like when you look at pictures of World War II, you see these 18-year-olds going to war. These guys look like they're 35, 40-year-old men, and they're 18 because they've experienced life, baby. And I think you're in a similar role, and you live a non-traditional life. I just had a guy on, Lucas. He was college dropout and bootstrapping his own marketing biz right now. And it's like, you have taken the path less traveled. What along the way, Dom, because you talk about pain and suffering, what have been some of the biggest pain points along the way to you? Because this isn't all, you can look at your Instagram and you can look at your pod and it can seem super sexy and beautiful, and it is. But like, it's not all peak moments. What have been some of the valleys you've gone through to get to where you're at?
Sure. I think you've understood this in our relationship, but I think it's valuable for the listener out there. Like, brutal honesty is what I think everyone has deserved out there. And I think people in my shoes can BS it, as you were saying, and be like, oh, look at the 90 pairs of free shoes in my closet. Like, this life is great. I think when you own your own thing, or when you are building something, there is no such thing as Christmas. There is no such thing as Easter. They exist, but you have a business to run and you have mouths to feed of contractors. And if you don't post that day, no one's going to see your account. And if no one sees your account, you're not growing. And if you're not growing, you're not getting better. And if you're not getting better, like, you're not, chasing the impact that you want to have. You're not feeding, the mouths you want to feed, XYZ. So I would say with that comes immense pressure that I put on myself, which can come with immense stress that I'm even struggling to figure out presently. And I'm being very proactive with like how to fix some of these things. But even like 2 weeks ago, just wildly stressful period. And I literally threw up from stress, or at least I think I threw up from stress. And that was a moment for me where I was like, okay, you got to shift some things. Like, even if it's saying no to more things, this is not healthy or good. And you should probably take a step back in certain areas, or learn to handle some things better. And I don't say that to boast at all. I think that's I'm not like, oh, I worked so hard, I threw up. That's not good. I'll be the first to say that's not good at all. And so I would say some of the pain points are, the extreme responsibility and ownership I have in my life that has gotten me to where I am today is also a pain point, in the sense of it makes it very hard to back off, very hard to be present with people when I'm not working, very hard to shut my brain off, very hard to not overthink. I could go on and on and on, but I think it's a very true sentiment that your biggest strengths are also your biggest weaknesses. It's like, my dedication is what has gotten me to where I am today, but also at the same time, my dedication can be, crippling in all aspects of my life. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but I think the biggest pain point is just kind of what comes with the extreme responsibility and ownership of owning your own thing. And that's why I'm actually kind of positive about 9-to-5s for a specific type of person, is because it's actually quite the life. Your phone hits 5 p.m. and you go home and you don't have to think about work till 9 a.m. the next day. That's not a luxury you get if you run your own business.
I just did a post on the art of staying put. And everyone always thinks the grass is greener, but the grass is actually green on both sides of the hill. And there's a lot of beauty of where you're at. Don't always be chasing the next thing. And like, if you have a nice quality of life, maybe you don't make as much as you want, but just sink into that and appreciate what you have. And because there's going to be stuff on the other side of that hill. You talked, Dom, about the privilege of getting to play the game of life. We're the lucky ones, the privilege to feel pain, suffering, and sorrow. You just talked a little bit about some of the pain, suffering, and sorrow you experience with a growing enterprise. To feel pain means to be alive, and what a gift that is. I talked with Bridget Nohara on my show a month ago about getting your head where your feet are and pausing to reflect and know where you want to go. And like, you puking, that was a sign to you of like, okay, I got to adjust. What rituals do you have to reflect and pull back to make sure you're aiming your effort in the right direction?
It's an excellent question. Guys, this man's great at his job. Give him a 5-star review while we're out of here. Let's just pause the podcast. Excellent question. And going back real quick, one of my favorite sayings I heard on my podcast, actually, the guest said, Matt Choi, his name was, he goes, the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's just greener where you water it. The grass doesn't grow if you don't water it. And I thought that was excellent.
That is so good.
Yeah. Anyways, in response to your question, I think growing up in a big family, I very much value family. And so I think one of the things that grounds me the most is literally calling a sibling or a parent, and just, unwinding, because they are a place of, security and safety that I can be brutally honest and open with. So in terms of habit or routine, calling my mom every day, honestly, has been an excellent one. She's such a good listener. So I literally just talk her ear off, and occasionally she'll give insight here or there, but she's so good at, she'll literally listen to me yap for 30 minutes and somehow find it interesting enough to stay on the line. That actually, I think, is a very good habit or routine. Another one I think is very simple, but not looking at your phone before you pray in the morning. I think it really centers you and grounds you before you get into the craziness of life. And then I think, doing something hard every single day, whether that's going to the gym or going for a run or going to the sauna. I think doing hard things like really pushes you. And there's this quote, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, you are only as mentally tough as your life demands you to be. An easy life fashions a mind that can only handle ease. A challenging life builds a mind that can handle challenge. Like a muscle that atrophies without use, mental strength fades unless it is tested. When life doesn't challenge you, challenge yourself. And so I would say that's the third routine. Like doing something hard every day, I think has been a lovely way to take myself out of my head and to really, like, there's this great quote from Seneca. He said, the body must be treated rigorously so that it's not disobedient to the mind, which is so good.
Yes.
And I think through really testing your body, you also test your mind, and it allows you to show up in better ways in your work, your relationships, your family, all other aspects of your life.
I love that. And Dom, you taught me this. It's had such an impact in my life. If you're listening and you haven't tried this, try this out for a week and see if it makes a difference. Put your phone on privacy mode, or what's it called? Do not disturb mode. If you have an iPhone,
you'll piss everyone off who calls you, because you have to call them twice to get through, but it's amazing.
Yeah, it truly, it's changed my mornings. It's changed the way I work. Now I'm only focused on my phone when I want to be, because it's not dinging me, pulling me out of what I'm doing. So I lose focus of what I'm doing. I look down here, and now if I don't reply right away, I have to get back into my work and then get back into the phone. Do not disturb has been one of the biggest gifts. And I've talked about this other thing on another podcast, but putting your phone outside of your bedroom and not accessing it until you're ready to access it. Like, you pay yourself first with the first part of your day. And the phone often is a distraction. At least for me, man, when I look at that thing, my brain starts racing. And so I keep it by the coffee pot, and I don't grab it until I'm ready to go to work at whatever time it is that day. And my morning time is for me and my family, and I do not let the phone get in the way. Try that for a week, people. If it doesn't change your life, that's fine, but I'm curious if it will.
Yeah, so good.
No one is thinking about you. Don't let fear of what others think hold you back from taking action. 2-part question. 1, you're a social media person. Do you actually live by that? Because I would think someone like you would be very focused about how you look. 2, for someone like me, when my running shorts and my running hat don't match, should I go out and run, or should I just call it quits that day because my neighbor might see me and think I'm a goof?
I love it, man. I would say that's point or lesson 7, and reading it back. No one is thinking about you. Don't let fear of what others think hold you back from taking action. That very intentionally doesn't say don't think about others thinking about you. It says don't let fear of what others think hold you back from taking action. So you
great distinction. Great. I'm happy you made that.
You thoughtfully put that. Yes, in my business, you think about it all the time. But I would say, in all honesty, I don't think I let it hold me back from doing what I actually want to do. I really don't. And I think that decision, Andy, actually really, really impacted me 5 years ago. Or sorry, let me reframe this. 5 years ago, I think it changed. So this is actually really cool. 5 years of the running effect was July 17th, 2025. So last Thursday. So actually a week ago was the 5-year anniversary.
Congratulations, man. That's huge. That's huge.
Thank you. I knew in my head that I wrote something the day of my first podcast, but I never went back and looked back. But I knew I did because I've got excellent memory. And so I scrolled through these journals. It's funny. Starting in 6th grade, I started writing what I did. I started writing my goals every day and then what I did every day. It sounds funny in hindsight, but I thought that I would be great someday. And I thought that someone would want to write a book on me, or I would write a book on me. So I was like, well, they should probably know what like I'm doing in 7th grade, 8th grade, etc. So I think for 3-4 years, I literally wrote what I did every day for a couple of years. Besides the point, that's where journaling came from. The day of the podcast.
Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. There's a lot of power in the subconscious that you were activating that you may not have been aware of.
Totally. Yeah.
But someone is going to write that book about you one day, and thank God they have that precious 7th grade material.
Hopefully, there's some funny stuff in there. So anyways, I find this. I hadn't looked back on it for 5 years. I find this 5 years later. I date it July 6, 2020. That episode later come out July 17, 2020. I literally noted the time, 9:50 a.m., just titled Podcast Thoughts. I said, quote, wow, we might have made it. I've been thinking about starting a podcast for well over a year now. Today is finally the day where I break the streak of being fearful. I really think fear kept me from starting one. Fear of what others might think, fear of numbers, fear of making a subpar product. Well, today I break that fear. I'm recording with Alex at 3 p.m. today. I'm very nervous, but also excited. I just need to disband all fear and step into the unknown. We're going to make something special. Time to take a leap of faith. Which is it was actually really cool to see 5 years later and all that it's become and be like, wow, even back then you were like, time to make something special. So I say that because I think that day and actually starting the podcast was the day that I as I wrote there, like I let fear stop controlling my life. And that's not to say that the next 600 episodes, I didn't have parts in my heart that were fearful of what other people might think or say, or even the Marco podcast, we were talking about it before here. In my mind, I'm like, is this too explicit? Is there too many F words? What are people going to think? But I don't let that hold me back from hitting publish. Because again, there's a difference between acknowledging that you're fearful and letting it control your actions and decisions. Now, to point two, yes, you should absolutely go for that run. Make the neighbor feel insecure that he's not running and that he doesn't have a cool, fun fit.
I love that. And if you're over 18, go to the Running Effect podcast. Marco Langan and Dom did an awesome podcast. It's hilarious. It is explicit, so you need adult ears to listen. But wow, I love that one. I'm in the middle of it right now, and it's really good. So, Dom, take me back. So you just read the entry of your journal of day one, the running effect. The question is, couple parts. Was it called the running effect then?
Yes.
It was?
Yeah. Yep.
I was going to do all the parts, and then I thought I'll just ask one question at a time.
No, the running effect, yes. Way back when, still the same.
Crazy that the name is stuck, and you've just stuck with it. It's the perfectly aptly named. So, 2, what did you think it was going to be, and how has it evolved differently than you thought? Because now you kind of have this media business that you're growing on top of your podcast, but maybe fueled by your podcast. Was that part of the original plan, or did that grow organically? And if you're listening to this, I want you to think, audience, guests, my friends, about your passion. And sometimes you can't see the finish line. You just have to get started, because you can only switch directions if you're moving. If you're standing still, you can't change directions. It's hard to grow. And so anyway, as Dom's telling his story, see how this might relate to you there.
Yeah, I think I started it simply out of the desire to have conversations or have an excuse to have a conversation with someone who is so much better than myself. Kind of how I viewed it was, if I email an Olympian and say, hey, get on a phone call with me, let me ask you questions, they'll always say no. But if I say, hey, I have this podcast, would you like to come on? And then I ask them all the same questions I would on the phone call, it's like socially acceptable, and they'll say yes to it. So I think for me, the early desire was to learn and to create something that I myself would have wanted to have 2-3 years before that. And so the desire was very simple. It was just, when I would come across a runner or a coach who I could come in contact with, who I think would provide me quality value, I reached out, we had a conversation, I released it, and I really didn't think about numbers much, really, for the first 2 years. It was just like an occasional note of encouragement from someone, and to me, that was enough to be like, okay, I'm making an impact. But it was a very, I would say, selfish pursuit, but also selfless pursuit. I think it was selfish in the sense of I myself wanted kind of to unlock that next level of knowledge that would take me to the next level in running, as well as I remember my dad, he was like, what's your goal for this? And I said, if at least one person gets impacted every episode, I'll be happy. And I'm glad I set the bar so low because yeah, it's such a small, manageable, you see 100 people listen. And in my mind, I'm like, well, hopefully one of them, got impacted.
Yeah.
I would say how it relates to today, I think just over time, it became a little more serious, a little more like, oh, this is having impact. How do I, 10x the impact, 100x the impact? And I think that just naturally came with adding more things on like social media, like event marketing, and now presently figuring out, how do we create companies underneath the running effect? I'm actually meeting with my CPA today at 1 p.m. to discuss like holding company and,
Yes.
structure of things. And because there's companies I want to buy, there are companies I want to start. And so I really feel like it's kind of turned into this kind of whole business media empire. I would say I feel way more like a business today than I did 6 months ago, than I did a year ago, than I did 2 years ago. And I think how I talk about what I'm doing a year from now will be different than what I'm doing today. But I think the key part, and you said this earlier, so hitting the nail on the head again, like being where your feet are, enjoying the present moment, realizing that 3 years ago, I would have loved to be in this position. And just because I am going to be so much farther ahead in 3 years doesn't mean that I need to reside there, in the present day, because if I do that, it's actually going to hinder my ability to get there. So yeah, I'm very much a believer of chapters and seasons. And I think this is the chapter and season that God has called me to, but I don't think it'll necessarily be that chapter or season in 10 years. And I think there's a realistic possibility that I go on a podcast 20 years from now and someone says, oh, tell me about the running effect. And I go, wait, what? How do you know about that? That's so niche. That was like way back in the day. So
That artifact. Yeah.
yeah. So I think I'm just big on like nail the season and chapter of life you're in and then go from there. And that extends not just from work, but also I think I talk to a lot of new dads. I think it's very similar. It's like, don't beat yourself up that you can't work out 7 days a week when you have a newborn crying every night.
Yeah.
Do what you can with what you have, and there'll be seasons where you can do more. Like I even think about that for me with working out now. It's like, oh man, I can run, work out, and go to the sauna every day if I want to, because I'm not married. This is great. I'm going to enjoy this while I can. Because I know, Andy, you can tell me, I know those days are limited.
Oh, baby. Soak them up. But then you can get back into those days. Once you get into your routine with your wife and your family, you can get back into those days. But there are certainly periods of time when you just got to put your head down and plow. And that's okay. Don't be frustrated. Just be where you're at. Speaking of the spiritual aspect of all of this, Dom, I heard someone say recently, and it really impacted me, don't look for God in the past with all your anxiety and your mistakes. He didn't say, I was. Don't look for God in the future with all your hopes and ambitions and fears. He didn't say, I will be. Look to the present moment because God said, I am. And God is with you in the present moment. And in some ways, ever since I've heard that, I'm getting chills on my body right now. I'm thinking, I wonder if part of eternity is the here and now. Like our unity with the eternal is being present in the moment. And when we can truly and fully be present here, that is an extension into eternity in a way we cannot experience if we're living in the past, thinking about embarrassing moments or anxieties or worried about the future and where I'm going to go and what I'm going to be. It's like, just be here. We have a certain set of decisions right in front of us right now, things we can do and impact and influence. How am I going to respond right now?
Yeah. What I'll say to that, correct me if I'm wrong here in your own experience, but when I think about the past and I think about some of my most fond memories growing up, rarely is it the, big Christmas morning or, big sports game or these moments that back in the day when I was in the present moment, I put up so much expectation and anticipation up to it that it was really hard for it to live up to the hype. The moments I actually appreciate the most in hindsight are, staying up way too late with my two brothers. We shared a same room, talking late into the wee hours of the night, or going to get ice cream, or going on a bike ride with my family, or playing in the yard for hours every summer day. And if you were to go back to that version of Dominic in those moments and be like, do you think this is something you'll remember 15 years from now? I probably would have been like, no, I'm just eating ice cream, or I'm just playing in the yard. But I think the reason why those moments stand out is actually because those are the moments you're most fully present. Like Go get ice cream with your kids and your
Whoa.
wife, and it'll be the
Whoa.
same thing.
Yes.
Like you're not, yeah, you're those small moments, I think, actually allow you to be, super present rather than the big ones where you have the massive family vacation that you've planned and anticipated. And not saying that those moments can't be memorable, but I actually think on my podcast, I asked a Stanford athlete once, I said, she had been a 10-time All-American, like one of the best runners in NCAA history. I said, what's your most fond memory? And she said, eating a bagel with friends after track practice. It wasn't a
Is it?
championship race. It was just the simple moments that seem insignificant that over
Yeah.
time there's how did I frame this? There's like extraordinariness in the ordinariness. I don't know if those are real words, but I think there is. I think you
They
just
should
have to
be.
have that perspective.
Extraordinariness in the ordinariness. Dom,
Something like that. Someone can
you
chat
coined it.
GPT
It's
me.
like ESPN created the word physicality 5 years ago. It used to not exist, but now everyone's got physicality. And it's like, it used to not be a thing, but now we got extraordinariness in the ordinariness. Can't even say it. It's a tongue twister.
Yeah, there you go. Vocal warm up.
Just like your Stanford girl, Scheffler just won this big open
Yep.
over in the UK. And he said, the glory fades in like 4 or 5 minutes. And I'm thinking about where I'm going to dinner with my wife that night. And all these peak, it's just such a good reminder. I posted about Epstein the other day, and like this is a guy who could literally, he did anything he wanted. Yet when you look at his eyes, he does not look fulfilled. And people so often wait for the thing that they think they want. And I point him out because he's a dude, one of the very few in the world that literally seemed to do exactly what he wanted, despite the perversions. And he just looks empty. Like if we wait for the thing, I don't know if there's fulfillment there. I think the fulfillment is just like you said, going in the backyard and running around, eating a bagel with friends, getting ice cream, hanging out, being in the present moment. Number 11, the journey is the reward. Dom, we're not going to make it through the list of 20. If anyone listening is curious, go to Dom's. You posted it on LinkedIn is where I saw it. Did you post it anywhere else? Is it on Instagram and everywhere?
Yeah, LinkedIn and Instagram, I believe.
So if you scroll back a little bit, you can see on Dom's feed his top 20 things he's learned in 20 years. We're going to skip around or else we'd be here all day. The journey is the reward. So on my team, we generate tens of millions of dollars in revenue for the business every year. And these are complex deals, right? When we get off here, I'm going to a meeting that will turn into $2 to $5 million in 2 years. Like these are long range goals that we're working on. But I don't want my team and I don't want myself to get bored in the meantime. So we have to celebrate milestones along the way. So like I've got a dinner plan. We're going to do a nice dinner tonight that like we made it to this point. We're actually training the pilot team to launch a pilot of what we're doing here. And I have found celebrating just helps me engage in gratitude and be in the moment of where we were, where we are, and where we're going. Because early on, I was just waiting for that purchase order to come in. I was waiting for the money to come in. But gosh, by the time the money comes in, my head is already thinking about that. I'm already halfway through the next thing. And so if I found I missed it, like I missed the joy of the moment and I missed the joy of the process. So in your rituals and your routines, how are you intentional about making the journey the reward?
I think just being mindful that I do it for the journey and not for the reward. And I think as humans, we think we do it for the reward, but I actually don't think we do. I think that's why you talk about the 5 hours of the hike to get to the summit, and rarely do you talk about the peak from the summit. You talk about the funny stories on the way to get there. Because I think the journey is actually the fun part. And then as you very well put, like once you get to the reward, you're just thinking about the next thing because it's validation. You can do the next thing. And so I think the biggest question that my high level guys struggle with is how do you balance being grateful for what you have and where you've come with the ambition and the mindset of wanting more and wanting to do more because you know you can be more and do more and all of that. And I think for me, that has been a massive struggle of like, wow, I remember when I had only made $200 from the podcast, telling my mom, if I could one day, and one day I meant 15 years from now, 20 years from now, make $55,000 a year. This is a direct quote. Doing the podcast, I will be thrilled. I will have made it in life. And that's the biggest gut punch, Andy, because I make way more than $55,000 a year. And the podcast is bigger than I ever thought it would be. And I'm not staying true to that version of Dominic. So I think that, thinking about things I told myself in the past, I think really ground me and helped me to enjoy the journey, where I think sometimes I'm like, I have 3 podcasts today. And then you think back to that letter I wrote myself and I'm like, you have 3 podcasts today? The podcast is still
Yeah,
going 5 years later? Are you kidding me? Or,
dude.
oh, I have to go to Eugene, Oregon next week. This has been in my mind recently for the US Track and Field
Yes.
Championships. And I'm like, bro, you watched that meet growing up. Like, what are you complaining about?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean desires can't shift over time. But I think realizing that you are most likely living in answered prayers. If you're living a good life and you're taking action, most likely I would bet that you're living in answered prayers. And so I think the simple practice I do is just the reflection of what would myself 2 years ago think of me now, and would he be grateful and happy with the present reality? And I think almost
Yeah.
always the answer is yes.
My wife just reminded me about this. We've got a big project going on at our house, and you got to pick the tile and the this and the that. There's a bazillion decisions, and she said, "We don't have to do this. We get to do this. You don't have to go to Eugene, Oregon. You get to go to Eugene, Oregon. You don't have to be on 3 podcasts. You get to be on 3 podcasts. And to whom much is given, much is expected." It's like the parable of the talents. The guy that had 10 and did a lot with it, he got 10 more. The guy that had 1 and didn't do anything with it, it was actually taken from him and given to the guy with 10. So it's like, I wonder in our mind, when you're experiencing exponential growth like you are, and in a lot of our lives, you can't foresee how the dominoes will fall in the future. So it's like, in a way, you are being true, because you had just made $200 and you thought $55,000 might as well been $55 million. Like it probably seemed that far away. And so now you're just watching the flower unfold, and you're smelling it, you're looking at it, and you're like, I don't want one flower. The world needs a garden, and I want to help facilitate a garden if that's what I'm called to. And like, I think that's the struggle I'm feeling, Dom. And I wonder if a lot of people do, is you want to become the best version of yourself, but you also want to live an integrated life, a full life, a balanced life. But it seems like, and Alex Osberg mentioned this in his podcast with me, and you introduced me to him, and that's been such a fruitful relationship. Thank you for that. He's like, the more expert you become in a given domain, the more your blinders get put on, and the more you're only focused on this. And I naturally want to punch back, because I want to do everything. I want to be exposed to everything. So I don't know how you continue to grow and stay well balanced. What's your take on that? Is it possible?
I think if you want to be the best of the best of the best, your life is going to look like shambles in every area outside of that one specific area. I really have yet to I think that's why Scotty Scheffler is so refreshing. And people are talking about this in sports media all this week. It's like, is he a really good representative of our sport? He's so calm, blah, blah, blah. But I genuinely think he's the only like GOAT of our time that is actually balanced. You think about Michael Jordan, you think about the gambling addiction, you think about Tom Brady, you think about the divorce, you think about Tiger Woods, you think about, oh gosh, that could be a podcast in and of itself. You think about, I mean, go down the list of GOATs. Even you go outside of sports, think about Musk, think about Trump. Think about, I mean, just politicians in general. Think about Bezos. What is he on his 2nd or 3rd marriage? Like, really, all these people sacrificed everything to be good at one thing. And it's a personal calculation of, do you want that in your life? And I think a problem we have as a society is we put these people on pedestals, and we want that specific thing. We want Jeff Bezos's mansion and bodyguards and cars and everything. But do we want the divorces that come along with it and the crippled relationships that he has because of his inability to invest in his relationships, because all his time is devoted to building one thing? It's like, probably not. And so I don't think there are enough figures out there that do a really good job of showing that they can be successful while having a sustainable life, and they get to a point where they're just like, this is enough for me. And I think that's something I'm trying to figure out now at my age, as I'm starting to grow up and get older, is like, yeah, what is that, not even number, but what would I have to have in my life to consider it complete, so that when I get to that point, I stop chasing and I stop striving, and not chasing and striving in terms of like investing in quality ways, but in terms of my mindset of what's next. Because I
Yeah.
think I could get to the point where I have a super nice house and 2 really nice cars in the garage and a family and kids, and I'm focused on how do I get the second one. And,
Oh yeah.
I don't think that's a healthy, and most people fall into that trap. So anyways, I think a personal calculation for a lot of people is just like, what do you want? Sit down and ask yourself that question for a year, and then promise yourself that that really won't change. Because it's just, I think so many people get stuff. Again, you're living in answered prayers. You get to that answered prayer, and then you keep wanting the next thing and the next thing. And that doesn't mean that you should become stagnant, but I think it just means that you should stop wrestling for more, because I think that is a quick way to die, as in a quick way to get to your death and look back and say, oh, I was never grateful for what I had. But I think there's this excellent quote that puts in perspective a lot of what you said. And the quote is, I spent so much of my life terrified of what I was going to become and whether I was going to be right here, right now. Gosh, how much time did I waste afraid I wasn't going to be right here, right now? If I could change, the only thing I'd change about my whole life would be fearing less that I wouldn't get right here, the place I was going anyway. I wouldn't change all the
Mm.
mistakes and mishaps. I needed those, but all the constant worry that I wasn't going to make it, that took me out of the moment, that took me out of enjoying these experiences, smiling, eating my lunch, or whatever I was doing. Know your mission, have faith you're going to get there. Wherever you go, it's going to be all right. Just find ways to get out of your head.
I love that. I love that. I feel like I may have to change the name of this podcast to Reflecting, because every episode now it seems to come back to reflection. And if you aren't reflecting, you're not appreciating the moment. You don't know where you want to go. You don't know where you're going. You're just kind of responding and reacting to stimulus that's hitting you. And you just said it a second ago, like, think about what you want to do, who you want to be, where you want to go. And even if it takes you a year, think about it. Most people are not moving with intention. They're responding. They're not being proactive. They're not taking themselves to the day. The day is taking it to them. And I see that in people's eyes. When you go to the grocery store, you see people, sunken eyes, man. They're getting beat up all over the place. That's why, I mean, that's kind of what this has evolved. This podcast started for my sons, like, so I could leave them some nuggets of wisdom in case something were to ever happen to me. Like, hey, this is what dad thinks about this, And then the more I started to put stuff out there, the more I thought, man, there's a lot of people that might just need a little bit of a wake-up call. And I've had the gift of a lot of criticism in my life and a lot of wake-up calls in my life. Shame on me if I don't give that back in a certain way. And so that's where this thing is at right now. But like, reflecting is so big. It's evolved into me thinking about doing a workbook for my season 1 where I summarize each episode, highlights, and then have a little reflection box. I do self-reflection guides after every episode to help people personalize this stuff, because it's like, okay, it's one thing to hear Dominic Schlueter talk about this, but he's been working on this for 5 years and he's got a great niche and he's got this and that and all this. God sprinkled fairy dust on him. And it's like, well, okay, how do I make this personal for me and for you, the listener? So these self-reflection guides, I want to do this workbook so people can take another step back, because as my father-in-law, the great Mike McCartney, would say, ink beats memory. You think you're going to remember these things, but you just don't. And it's like, man, you got to write it down so you can go back there and remember the vividness of the moment. So, Dom, I told you 30 minutes. I can't believe I got you for this long. Thank you for taking a break in the day before you head out on your next trip. You get the final word, man. What do you want to say? How do you want to leave it with the guests?
Oof, the great responsibility. I'll try to keep this succinct. First thing that comes into my head, so I'll run with it. The odds of you existing as uniquely you are 400 trillion to 1. I think I've shared that stat with you before. You can't look at that stat and tell me that you were made to do something small, to play the game of life small. You and I believe we're going to heaven, but regardless, this is your one shot at life. And so don't accept anything less from yourself than full effort every day, full intent to be great, to do something great, to make something great. And that looks different for everyone. It could look like being the best stay-at-home mom that you can possibly be. It could look like if you're in high school listening to this, crushing your landscaping job, being kind to the people you see in the grocery store. I think a lot of times when we talk about greatness, we think about these big businesses and millions of dollars. And I think we have it all twisted. Again, it goes back to that core principle of what do you want out of life? And then what does greatness look like within that?
Yeah.
Greatness can be defined as different things to different people. But I think you have a moral responsibility, and I truly mean that, to be great. I'll leave you with a hot take here. Because I was going to say this earlier.
Go, Dommy.
You can cut this if this is too controversial, but I've been praying and chewing on this. You were talking about the parable of talents. I heard this video a few months ago, and it was summed up like this. Does God have favorites? Okay. We should have led the podcast with this because this is a great hook. Does God have favorites? Because he loves everyone and XYZ, XYZ. And this person was saying, Andy, if I have a Ferrari and I, give it to someone and I come back a year later and it's trashed, the tires are like not great, the system's not great, didn't get an oil change, looks bad. I'm not going to give them more. I'm probably going to cut them out. I'm not going to give them more because they weren't charitable with what I gave them. But on the contrary, if I give other person Ferrari and I come back and it's clean and shiny and just got an oil change and was super well taken care of, I will entrust them with more. And so I thought about that in relation to God, and I was like, oh, is it the same? Parable of talents, very similar story. We will be judged one day on what we have, what we are given, and how we use those gifts. So I asked someone about this, and they go, absolutely, God has favorites. He said, you break down the word favorite, and the first part is favor, and it's very explicit in the Old Testament that God favored, Moses, Elijah, Abraham, XYZ, and he blessed them in those ways. And so, not to get overly spiritual here, but I do think you have a moral responsibility to be excellent and to be great with the gifts you were given by God. And through being excellent within those gifts, God will bless you tenfold. And I think, Andy, you could speak to this in your life. I can certainly speak to this in my life. I do not know of one person who is not flourishing in some aspect of their life who has been devoted to maximizing the gifts they were given. Maybe I'm good at speaking, but I put it to use. Maybe I'm good at running, but I put it to use. And so if you're out there listening, you can make excuses all you want about how he has this or she has that, or she grew up in this household with more money and got more opportunities and XYZ. But there's beauty in you're writing the book of your life through your actions every single day. And the thing that scares me the most is losing the favor of God. And I think I will do that by squandering my gifts and talents. And I think that goes for everyone out there. So be truthful to the gifts you were given, and God will bless you immensely within those.
I'm just letting that sink in, baby. Whoa. That's a modern take on the gift of the talents, and it makes sense. And I heard it say, just to tack on, because it helps me think of it this way, like you have raw materials. Maybe you are good at speaking. What are you going to do with those raw materials? You're going to hone that. You're going to practice. You're going to increase your vocabulary, practice, and actually utilize that. A lot of us have abilities in one area or another, but they're natural. If you don't practice and work on that and hone it, it can't become a skill and a craft. So I love your take, Dom. That's hot. That's hot, baby. Hot like an oven, and I'm leaving it in. Dom, where can people find you? People, maybe this is their first time being exposed to you. Where do they find and subscribe?
Yeah, I think everywhere at The Running Effect on social media, and then the podcast is The Running Effect Podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And Andy, thank you for the time. You're probably the best host I've ever had on any podcast I've ever been on, and you're only 20 episodes in. And fun fact for you, when you hit 21, you are in the top 1% of podcasters all time, because 90% of podcasts quit after 3 episodes. Of those that survive, the 10% of those that survive, 90% of those quit after 20. So if you release 21 episodes, you're in the top 1%. So congratulations, keep it moving. And I hope to just stay in your corner as you become Mr. Big Time over here with the podcast.
Oh, man, I'm in your shadow. Thank you so much. Dominic Schlueter, everyone. Thank you for coming. Hey, if you hung on this far, I hope you got something out of this. If someone's in your mind, you're like, man, I wish they heard this. Will you just hit pause, share this podcast with them right now? That's the way we grow. It's all organic growth. It's all word of mouth. Please share this. If you're not subscribed, just subscribe over at YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your stuff. I've got premium content on my Substack, the self-reflection guides and other material to help you internalize this stuff. I can't wait to see you next time. Hey, next week is episode 21, and that's where I rise into the top 1%, baby. Dom Schlueter,
go.
have a great one. Talk to you guys
Appreciate
next
you.
time. See ya.